welcome you to this evening tonight. And it was also a great honor for us since the inception of the conference that you are here, and your presence was extremely valuable. And we're especially grateful for your continued support and, of course, for your instrumental role in the renovation of the European Cultural Center in Delphi, which we hope will be completed in a year or the latest in 2 years. So, as you may know, we are hosting more than 1,000 speakers, 2,500 guests coming from 62 countries who are with us these days to address the critical global realignments of our times. And this is actually the very theme we have chosen for the forum this year. And of course, Mr. Prime Minister, as you know, this is the annual meeting, but we have expanded recently. We are in Washington, we are in Brussels, we are in Paris, we are in Toronto, and as of November, we're going to be in Berlin as well. So once again, I extend to you my sincere gratitude for your presence and for your participation. And please, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome to the podium His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Greece, Mr. Mitsotakis. Mr. Robert Kaplan will be the discussant. Thank you.
Well, welcome everybody. It's a sincere honor for me to be here with you, with the Prime Minister, for this occasion. We live in, it's a cliche to say we live in historical times, but we really do. A cliche that was ascribed to Lenin, though he probably never said it, was that decades can march on and nothing happens. And then days and weeks and months go on and decades happen. Now that's happened in specific parts of the world, in Ukraine starting in 2022, in the Middle East starting in late 2023. But it's been about 80 years since we can say that decades are happening in weeks and months and days for the whole world system. And it is a world system because we live in a more anxious, claustrophobic world because of the way technology has not defeated geography, but shrunk geography. So we're all stuck with each other. And Greece is a country where it's in the center of everything. I believe it's as close by flying time to Moscow as it is to Brussels. So it really is in the center. So my first question, Mr. Prime Minister, is how does Greece negotiate a world like that I've described?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be back at the Delphi Economic Forum. Congratulations to Simos for the incredible work he has done. The World Economic Forum started in 2000. The Delphi Economic Forum started in 2016. It was a year I was actually elected a leader of Nea Demokratia, so in that sense we've had parallel paths. So I have every reason to wish you success and longevity. Coming back to the question that you asked, this is indeed a very, very challenging time. And I was thinking that my younger daughter is going to be graduating from college this May. And I thought that I graduated from college back in 1990, 35 years ago, which was also a period of great realignments. But I think what makes this period so different from the time when I graduated from college is this feeling of pessimism and anxiety and uncertainty regarding this changing world, which is particularly prevalent, I think, in the younger generation. When I graduated from college, the world was our oyster. Everything seemed possible. It was a time when, the fallacy of the sort of the end of history sort of dominated the discussion. So the real question is, how does a country such as Greece navigate its very complex geopolitical and economic and technological landscape? The geography hasn't changed. Greece is a European country, a member of NATO. It is now, I think, a proud member of the European Union rather than the sick child of Europe, which allows us to play an important role in shaping our European policies. It's a country that has a strategic relationship with the United States that it values and cherishes and wants to build upon. But it is also a country that sits at the crossroads of three continents, and I'm speaking to someone who believes in the power of geography. We're also 4 hours flight from Abu Dhabi, 5 hours flight, 4 hours flight from Addis Ababa, 6 hours flight from Delhi. So we sit at the crossroads of the new sort of geopolitical realignments, the new trade routes, the new energy routes, and it is our obligation to navigate this complex new environment in a way that, first of all, ensures that the safety of the country, and because safety is a precondition for prosperity. So certainly, very challenging times and very different times from my generation experienced when we were much younger.
Well, the issue of the moment is economic. It's tariffs. It seems that in the 1990s, I remember, globalization was the latest buzzword, and it was used as almost a security element, when in fact it wasn't. Are we at the end of globalization? And, will this be looked back upon as the end of globalization? And again, in this tariff regime, how does Greece navigate?
I think it's too early to talk about the end of globalization, because this globalized world that was created under the leadership of the United States, because it was also in the interest of the United States to create this sort of global prosperity and exercise of soft power in a way that it has done. So I think it's very, very difficult to unravel what has been built over many decades, especially when we talk about complex supply chains. This is not something that you can actually change from one day to the next. The truth is that globalization has created global wealth, but this global wealth has not always been allocated in a necessarily just manner. It has created very, very rich people and sort of a new oligarchy of companies that exercise global power. It has certainly helped the developing world, and it has pulled hundreds of millions out of poverty, but it has also isolated and marginalized the middle classes of countries such as the US, to a certain extent also Europe, because simply jobs moved to where they were at the time cheaper. And now we are faced with a profound realignment whose future, I think, is still relatively unpredictable. I am a believer in free trade. Greece, I want to be very clear about that. Greece is a relatively small, open economy. Shipping is a key industry for Greece. Shipping is the lifeline of global trade, so we have every interest in protecting a rules-based international order that fosters rather than restricts trade. Now, speaking about the current, new tariff war, I do believe that when it comes to the US-Europe relationship, there is still a window of opportunity to negotiate an arrangement that can be mutually beneficial, simply because US-European trade is too important to destroy for both sides. There will only be losers if we don't manage to resolve this. And I was sort of satisfied that President Trump decided to push the pause button on the tariffs that he had announced. We still have 10% tariffs, which are not which are still pretty substantial, but much better than what was announced. And I do believe that we need to use this 90-day window of opportunity to have a very honest discussion about the trade regime between the United States and Europe. And if a deal, to use the language of the President of the United States, can be done, I think it needs to be a mutually beneficial deal. And if this means that we all sort of step back from our opening positions, that may be necessary in order for us to reach a compromise. So I'm reasonably optimistic that there is room to maneuver and a necessary acknowledgement that a full-blown global trade war will have dramatic consequences for every country, including the United States. And I think the markets have sent a very clear signal that they view these trade announcements with great concern.
Is Greece underinvested? Does Greece have the potential for a lot more foreign investment? Because after all, the location is perfect. It's a free market economy. You've turned the economy around. Greece is a serious country now in a way it wasn't decades ago.
Well, I'm glad you recognize that. I think it's important to remind ourselves where we came from, because we tend to forget easily how difficult this path was and how much progress I think we have made. And I'm glad you asked this question, because I have put investment at the center of our growth strategy. If I look back at where we were at the beginning of the crisis, we already had a significant investment gap. And actually, capital was destroyed during the crisis. But we're making up for lost ground. We are now at around 16% of our GDP. When I look at investments, we need to get to 20%. And of course, we need to convince both Greek business people, but also foreign investors, to invest in the country. And this is already happening. We've had record foreign direct investment into Greece because I think people understand that this country has certain natural comparative advantages. And I'm not just referring to our geography. For example, investments related to tourism or to logistics. You just look at the map, these investments make a lot of sense. But what I find particularly interesting is the investments we've been able to attract in technology. Why technology? Because we have an amazing human capital in Greece. Our public universities are producing excellent engineers, and many international funds and international tech companies have appreciated that, and that is why we see a booming tech sector in Greece that is actually, I believe, punching above our weight. So if you add up all the sort of comparative advantages that the country has in terms of its geographical position, its natural beauty, its agricultural sector, we produce extremely high quality products. That's why we are concerned about tariffs to the US, because we export our products to the US. And frankly, it doesn't make much sense for the US to put tariffs on products which it does not produce at all. I don't see the US, producing olives or olive oil anytime soon. But if you look at, for example, what we can do in terms of food security, what we can do in terms of energy, we've not spoken about energy, but Greece has become a net exporter of energy. We're leaders in renewable energy because we're endowed with ample free supply of wind and sun. You add all these up, and I think you have a very convincing growth story that attracts foreign investors. And it's much easier to make this case now than it was when I first came into power. You look at our borrowing costs, they are much lower than those of the US. They're lower than those of Italy. You look at our unemployment now, it's below that of Spain, it's below that of Finland, it's below that of Sweden. So undoubtedly, progress has been made, but there is still lots of work to do. Simplifying the bureaucracy, making sure we sort out, legacy issues which are related to land usage, looking at energy. And this sort of ties the discussion into the broader theme of European competitiveness. We need competitive energy in Europe in order to sustain our competitiveness. And the same is also true for Greek companies. But there at least we approach this discussion, I think, from an advantageous position because we're way ahead of other countries when it comes to renewables. You
mentioned engineers and science. AI. AI, China and the United States will be giants in AI, both of them. But for smaller countries, it could be, there'll be winners and losers. A country like Estonia has done very well in a digitized economy. That's where it really punches above its weight. How does that affect Greece? Does Greece have to become a really aggressive AI state?
Well, first of all, speaking about the digital transformation, the first project that we embraced when we came into power in 2019 had to do with the digital transformation of the state. And there, I think, we've made amazing progress. We're now way ahead of many other European countries in terms of the digital services that we offer. For example, we have a digital wallet. When we went through the vaccination process, everything was done digitally. Friends from the US were sending me photos of little paper slips as vaccination certificates. None of this happened in Greece. So I think we've leapfrogged quite a few countries in Europe when it comes to the digital transformation of the state. And of course, the next big leap is related to AI. We actually have a very, I think, well thought out strategy regarding our presence in this evolving AI global ecosystem. We were selected as one of the first 7 AI factories by the European Union, recognizing that something important is happening in the AI space in Greece. We're building supercomputers, we're building many data centers. The big hyperscalers are all here to build their data centers. And most importantly, we are beginning to very aggressively use AI to streamline public services and to make sure that we improve the productivity of the state. And the potential there is truly enormous. At the same time, we want to focus on certain specific verticals where we feel that we have very high quality curated data sets, which can be incredibly important, because data is probably even more important than computing power in this new emerging world. And for example, in healthcare or in defense, these are 2 verticals where we're looking to very much focus on. And of course, many startups working around AI, if we can offer them a friendly regulatory environment when it comes to data usage, access to computing power. I think we have the ingredients, again, to punch above our weight. We don't expect, of course, to compete with the countries that have different capabilities. But I do see in AI a tremendous opportunity to make a qualitative jump when it comes to what the country has to offer. At the same time, I do think we need to be at the forefront of having a serious discussion about how AI, and in particular the AI algorithms around social media, are undermining our democracy and are sort of endangering the mental health of our kids and our teenagers. So I would want to look at both sides of this discussion. Very bullish on the potential of AI when it comes to transforming the state and creating new opportunities. Very concerned about the impact of AI on our democratic discourse and on the mental health of children and teenagers.
You mentioned before about the long road Greece traveled. Since the Civil War, which came right after World War II, Greece has had a hard right wing. It had a populist left wing after a dictatorship of the colonels. It's taken decades to find the center. And I've always found that mass democracies function best in the center, on the center right or on the center left. What is your thoughts on this? Because you've lived it, essentially.
Our democracy, sort of after the fall of the junta, is already 51 years old or young, and it has been probably the best democracy that we've had. But this doesn't mean that we have not had our fair share of crisis. And if you look at what has happened in Greece over the past 50 years, we of course need to zero in on the economic crisis which almost ripped this country apart. We lost 25% of our GDP. This has never happened before in peacetime. Yet we've managed to recover and do much better. But we have not yet made up for the lost ground. And I think one of the reasons why we were able to do better over the past years had to do with the fact that we experimented with populism. And I think the Greek people reached the conclusion that populist promises are usually empty and they result in bad policies that don't improve their lives. And people at the end of the day are very practical and I think rational in terms of how they think. At the same time, the ghosts of populism are always present. And I'd say that 10 years after the worst sort of times of the economic crisis, when we had to close our banks and when we literally flirted with complete financial catastrophe, I do sense that sometimes we don't appreciate how close we came to a catastrophe, and we tend to forget easily what exactly happened 10 years ago. I'm saying this because I do believe that in a well-functioning democracy, you need, stable, reasonable parties that govern from the center. It could be the center-right or it could be the center-left. But if you look at the Greek political landscape now, you have a strong center-right party that is dominating the political landscape. But apart from the party I have the honor to lead, the rest of the opposition is completely fragmented. So you don't necessarily have a balanced system, and this may always give space for new populist voices to emerge. And at a time when people tend to be maybe slightly more emotional, more pessimistic, more driven by social media, I think the danger that you can have a re-emergence of populism is always there, because populists parties tend to come in cycles. But as long as we produce real results, create jobs, improve the disposable income, keep our promises, because we managed to win a second election doing actually better than we did in 2019 for one simple reason, because at the end of the day we delivered what we committed on, and we want to do the same now. We're halfway through our term, almost halfway through our term. I do think that we still have very good days ahead of us, because we have created a fiscal position that is very strong. And I think now is the time to ensure that this fiscal strength is felt by the average Greek, because we had real problems when it comes to inflation, as many countries have had. So I do believe that as long as you deliver, as long as you focus on real problems, as long as you're results oriented, as long as you remain humble and understand that the grievances that fuel the populist parties may be real, but the solutions offered by the populists are not the ones which are appropriate, I think we have a pretty good chance of winning the next election in 2027.